How are you feeling today? Good. We live in a world that's so ingrained in our daily lives to the point that it makes us feel uneasy or at a loss. We track our steps, we track the quality of our sleep, we track the calories that we burn, even barometric meter, and I get a storm alert on my watch when the pressure goes down. Now, this is not necessarily bad. Technology is good. But what I'm here today to share with you is one aspect of it, which is, it makes the world move a lot faster than what we are normally used to. In the book, The Four, The Hidden DNA, Scott Galloway stated that it took the telephone 75 years to reach 50 million users. The television, to reach 1 billion users, Microsoft Office took 22 years. Gmail from Google and Facebook took 12 and 9 years respectively. Any music lovers here? Despacito? How long did it take Despacito to reach 1 billion users? A mere 97 days. And until today, it is the most watched video on YouTube to the tune of 6.5 billion views. That's unheard of. What does it mean? It just shows us how things are moving so much faster in our lives today. It also means that companies and organizations need to strive to adapt, to move a lot faster. Consumers are demanding that they receive instant service, and instant gratification seems to be the order of the day. That is one of the findings of the Euromonitor research of 2019 with regards to consumer trends. Now, for you and I, for you especially, when you're trying to figure out how do I build my career? How do I make a difference in this world? How do I become a positive contributor of society? Nothing other than we have to move fast. You need to be able to think fast, you need to be able to push, and you need to be able to rush. Failure is in everyone's path. It's impossible to live life without failing, whereby whatever we do, you are bound to hit a stumbling block, a speed bump. It is about recovering from the failure and recovering fast is what I'm here to share with you today. None of us in this room have not had any experience with failure, I'm sure. And I'm not talking about failure in a relationship. I'm sure many of you can come on stage and share with us your examples. I'm talking about the failures that distort us. I'm also sure that some of you have seen, I've heard, Steve Jobs' Stanford University commencement speech from 2005, as well as J.K. Rowling's Harvard commencement speech from 2008, where she stated, "You would not have experienced failure at the scale that I have, but it is quite impossible or inevitable to live life without failure. In fact, it's impossible unless you've lived your life very cautiously, to which then we might as well have not lived at all. In other words, we would have failed by default. As we look at the various aspects of failures, let me start with the first key influencer, which is our brain. We do not want to face failure. When we fail, when we are faced with adverse situation, the stress bites every fiber in our body. It leaves us with a feeling of helplessness. It leaves us with a feeling of not being in control. You know what I mean. We've all faced this before. I'm facing it now while facing you on stage. Nevertheless, this is how the science is explained. The hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis is the part where it controls the series of interactions between the endocrine glands in our brain and our kidneys. And it controls our body's reaction to stress. In the face of an adverse situation, cortisol is produced in our brain. And cortisol prepares us to act, to jump, to move in face of, whether in the case of sports or a dangerous situation. But prolonged exposure to cortisol is negative for us because the other part of the brain, the hippocampus, the part where it is associated with learning, memories, and stress control, gets inhibited. It gets contracted. And then, as a vicious cycle, it inhibits the HPA axis from producing cortisol. So, it is a vicious cycle where we will end up feeling totally out of control. Our ability to deal with stress, our ability to think rationally is impacted. And the advice that I have is keep stress at bay. Exercise. Meditate. We all need to explore and expand our lives by ensuring we do not get overly exposed to prolonged stress, negative stress. With the moving of things being faster by the day, there are a few things that we are looking at in terms of achievements that you want to get into your lives as well as others. And the way to deal with this is to be nimble, agile, and to adapt. Let me take you through some examples. These are companies that you would have heard of. Rovio. Rovio is the producer of Angry Birds. But it took them 6 years. Rovio was founded in 2003. They produced 50 game titles, before Angry Birds was a success blockbuster in 2009. Angry Birds was their 52nd title. Amazon. You may have not heard of the Amazon Fire Phone. The Amazon Fire Phone was killed 3 months after it was launched. Amazon had to write off 170 million US dollars worth of investments, of which 83 million US were inventory or stocks of the Fire Phone that was not sold. Jeff Bezos, in his letter to shareholders of Amazon of 2018, stated, the learnings they took from the Fire Phone, because it started together with the Echo, they could transfer, including the resources, to the development of the Echo and Alexa. And he went on to state, Jeff Bezos, that success can be an iterative process. You invent, you launch, you reinvent, you relaunch, you start over, rinse, repeat, again and again. This is an important lesson. Even the largest companies quickly make decisions and move on. And this is our example of some two amazing companies. There are many more out there. And then there was SpaceX. The launch of SpaceX in 2006 lasted 33 seconds because it failed due to a rusty nut. In 2007, they had a second chance to attain or regain the credibility. Unfortunately, the rocket failed to lift off. But this is not to say that SpaceX failed. SpaceX achieved many firsts, including, in 2008, being the first privately funded company to put a rocket in orbit. Many of you would have examples of your own lives and your own stories. I recall a bit of my personal story. I've spent 27 years in my career, of which 21 years was in startups. We were in management consulting. We were in technology. I started one of the first internet companies in Malaysia in 1994, did telecommunications, automotive, as well as fintech. In all those years, there was a lot of pain. And it was through the learnings of those multiple failures that I recovered and learned and improved. The faster you fail between each attempt has been scientifically proven to give you a better chance of success. Believe it or not. Mr. Dashun Wang, or Dr. Dashun Wang, a professor of organization and management from the Northwestern University, and his associates studied 776,721 applicants for grants and funding to the US National Health Institute. They studied 46 years worth of venture capital data. And what did they find? Companies and individuals who had the shortest time between attempts were more likely to succeed. Meaning, the companies that spend time or individuals that end up being sucked into the pain of stress or failure would have a lesser chance to succeed. Please remember that. You've got to snap out of it. It is important to focus on what matters most. You can read this in nature.com. It was just a study published last month. Let me share with you a bit of personal experience, which I have never shared much in public. The 3 major failures in my life. The first one, 12 months. It took me 12 months to recover. We were a highly successful internet company. 9 months we went without salary. This was after the dot-com bust in 99, 2000. Whatever little income or revenue that we had was split equally amongst my 16-man team. At our peak, we were 64. I'm blessed and grateful to this day that my employees, who of course became my friends, endured the journey with me during that tough period. Some of them are now leading extremely successful lives in New York City, in London, in Shanghai, in Singapore, and Kuala Lumpur. The second startup I had, I sold pretty quickly, about 8 months to recover, as it were. Along the way, But the second failure was the toughest. The second startup, I sold partially, but the second failure was the toughest after that. How bad is bad? You got to hear this. I could not have a meal if my daughter did not finish hers. We're extremely proud of our daughters, Alisa and Iman. Both are energetic, both are competitive, equally important, both are witty. What happened at that time? By God's grace, I met my wife, Sabrina. She nurtured me back to health, she nurtured me back to strength, and I got back into the ring. So my third startup, I sold within a couple of months in order to move on and cover for the losses of old. Now, it is important for us to look at the key lessons that I mentioned today. Iteration, iteration, iteration. You got to move fast. It reminds me also of a period where I was racing 600cc super sport motorcycle at the Sepang International Circuit. When you crash, you have to go back in and try to recover. I've crashed at turn 1, turn 2, turn 4, turn 6, turn 9, you name it. But the point about going back in is important because you need to overcome the fear. No one does it better than Jorge Lorenzo. In Essen race, the Dutch TT of 2013, he broke his collarbone on Thursday, had surgery on early Friday morning, raced on Saturday to 5th place. Perfect example of bouncing back. Now, people ask me, how do you convert failure into stress? Failure into success? How do you manage stress and failure and convert it into success? Beyond determination, grit, perseverance, etc., let me put forward one thing to you today. In your free time, in your me time, let's say between the hours of 5 a.m. and 7 a.m., 9 p.m. and 11 p.m., do you use that time to watch Netflix originals? Or do you use your time for your personal betterment? Think about it. Every second counts. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here today. Let's fail fast and recover fast together to make our world a better place. Thank you very much.